And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Justin. Joining me, as always, my co host, David and JP. Today, we are excited to continue our Framing a Rookie Draft series where we're going to talk more about the different options we're considering at every pick in this first round of this super exciting 2024 rookie class. Today, we are breaking down pick 105. So a few weeks ago, I think there was an absolutely obvious pick here. We do have some players rising up in the rankings that we want to give a little bit of time to for consideration as well.
If you guys listened to the 104 episode, you heard we debated Neighbors and May. So Neighbors is definitely one of the top considerations here, but we also have Rome Odunze and Brock Bowers in consideration for this pick at 105.
Yeah, so those are some big time names here, and we are excited to discuss who we're going to take first. But as always, first we want to evaluate what else can we do with that pick. We're going to start with our rapid fire trade segment. Shout out to dynasty-daddy.com. Dynastydaddy.com is a great place to see trades from actual leagues. So, starting here with a start 11 league, the 101 or the 105, Michael Pittman, and the 205, David.
Yeah, so this one for me is most of the time I'm taking the package, but I think with most rosters, at least from my experience, you get about one or two shots a year to package a bunch of assets that you like and go get something you really want. When I do that personally, I try to target established studs, but we're so high on the 101 this year. If this is your move and you're making it for whether it's Marv or Caleb, you think that's the final piece to your roster, I'm okay with it, but I do think the package has slightly more value here.
I think I'm inclined to lean where you're going as well. Another start 11 deal, but not quite as explosive or exciting of a package, although there is an explosive and exciting piece in here. Devon A-Chain and the 203 or the 105 and the 401, JP.
And this one's tough because we are not big running back guys, especially when they're like 180 pounds. So that's what I'm struggling with here a little bit because I really prefer the 105. But I think just with where the market is, I'm gonna take HN and the 203 because I think that 203 is gonna be somebody really valuable like an AD Mitchell or Lad McConkey compared to that 401, which isn't gonna be nearly the prospect that you're gonna get.
Yeah, we don't even necessarily always believe running backs exist. Just kidding. Of course, we need to start them as well. Speaking of running backs that you don't just need to start, but you want to start. David, are you going in a start 9, CMC, or the 105?
Yeah, just a straight up one for one here. So there's a lot of dependence on league construction, roster construction, that sort of thing. I lean the pick because I like youth. I don't like overpaying for older running backs. But man, if you need a running back, that's a good price to go get. Most likely the RB1. And if he is healthy all season, most likely a cheat code at running back. So I'm okay with it. It's probably something I'd wait till I'm on the clock to make sure that my 103 hasn't fallen to me at 105. But if that's your need, that's where you're heading with your team, go ahead and get CMC. That's fine with me.
Definitely can understand making that if you're competing. And JP, our last trade, start 11, half point PPR, 1.8 in Pickens, or the 105 and the 304.
Another tough one here for me. I am not the biggest George Pickens fan, but I think just with how big of a gap there is from Pickens to the 304, I'm going to lean the 108 in Pickens. I think the 108, you're still going to get a really great player. If it's Brock Bowers, JJ McCarthy, I think you're going to be really happy with that package in a start 11.
Cannot blame anyone for taking that package there. I wanted to give you the hard questions today, JP, just to pick on you a little bit.
Challenge me.
So, hey, got to try to make it fun for you somehow, right?
That's right.
So now
That's
that
right.
we've sharpened our acumen a little bit here, looking at some real trades, we're going to, as always, make some hypothetical trades or deal with situations to give you actionable advice in your leagues. It seems that there's a pretty well recognized tier break at 105, JP. If someone approaches you and is looking to acquire the 105, would you be open to moving this pick?
Of course, it's always going to depend on what the offer is, but honestly, I'm not really looking to move this pick. If I'm on a rebuild, if I'm a rebuilding team or a contender, I'm pretty happy to hold this pick. I love this spot at the 105. A lot of people do see it as a tier break, and you're getting an easy decision. Who knows if Jaden Daniels, if Drake May falls? I'm probably going to smash that in a super flex league. Otherwise, you're looking at a top flight rookie wide receiver in a Malik Neighbors, or if you like Rome Odunze. But yeah, I'd rather hold until I'm on the clock. If somebody is a huge, they have a big need at quarterback, right? Maybe they love Jaden Daniels, right? 105, you're on the clock. They're like, oh, I did not expect him to be there, and they throw a big package your way. Yeah, I might consider moving the pick then, but they're gonna have to pay up for that because I'm gonna value that at a pretty high clip, because Jaden Daniels might go 102, 103 another draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because of all of that different valuations, it's a very interesting pick to value. So, on that note, how different are you valuing this pick from the 103 in trades? And can you give me a few examples of how you'd trade this pick for an established stud, David?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, it's kind of a lesson in tier management within a draft, right? For me, in the way this draft is fallen, I have Neighbors at 103. He's still on the board here. So I'm going to hold out for a trade package that is roughly equivalent to the value of the third pick of the draft. That being said, if you were a quarterback guy, you wanted Daniels and or May, you're sitting there with Neighbors. He's your fifth prospect in this draft. Chances are there's someone like me who has him at 103. In that case, I'd recommend going out and trying to find that manager and see if you can get him to overpay for the 105. So it just depends on how this tier falls. And I do think that final trade you showed there is a great example of this. In my opinion, the guy that traded 108 in Pickens for 105, I believe he was trading up for his third ranked prospect there. And I think that's kind of illustrates the point I'm trying to make. As for trading for studs, I think there's several options. You can have 105 still a valuable pick. If you missed out on your quarterbacks, we saw a trade on Dynasty Daddy 105 for Tua and 209. I think something along these lines could be gotten for Tua, Goff, Purdy, Deshaun Watson, maybe Jordan Love. If you might have to take out the second, you might have to add a little something for some of these guys, but somewhere in that neighborhood. We also saw 105 for Tyreek Hill, very similar to the CMC trade. If you just need a stud in your lineup, you want someone who's going to put up crooked numbers for you. I can't blame you for doing that. And we also have 105, 110, and 304 for Gibbs and 204. So basically 105 and 110 for Gibbs, and then you're upgrading from the 304 to the 204. I think that's okay, maybe a little to the ceiling of what I would pay. And in some leagues, I probably wouldn't pay it. Just in general, if you're looking for one of the big three running backs, or maybe a guy like Puka, Garrett Wilson, AJB, I think that the 105 can start the conversation. You're probably going to have to add something to it, depending on which player. I'd probably add somewhere between an early second and a late first. But that's why you have to go into the negotiations. You have to know your roster construction and your rule, your league structure and all that. But yeah, I think 105 can get you into those conversations with those elite assets if that's where you're trying to pivot.
Yeah, always interested in trying to get those elite assets in trades whenever that is possible. However, as we always want to acknowledge, we are not going to overpay for elite assets if it comes down to it and we have to stick and pick. We are always going to be willing to follow our process and take what we think is the best value that is available. So, a quick reminder of where we are at so far. We've seen Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Daniels, and Drake May come off the board. So, at the 105, we have one guy that we talked about in our last video that we're very interested in. However, JP, where are you leaning with this pick potentially, or who are you also considering here?
Yeah, I'm going to heavily be considering Rome Odunze here. I love Rome Odunze. And I actually have him in a spot where I've kind of tinkered back and forth with putting Rome above Neighbors, and I actually do have him there right now. Yeah, Dunze, he entered college, his first season was ruined by COVID pretty much. He entered a year earlier than Neighbors, so Neighbors didn't have to deal with that COVID season in college. So yeah, he only played a few games that freshman season in 2020, but in 2021 was when he really got to play his first season. So if you throw out that first season to compare side by side with Neighbors, because he didn't really get to play much, it's not 100% fair, but it also is sort of fair too because he had that season taken away. Year one playing, they both had about 400 receiving yards. Year two, Neighbors had 1,000. Adunze had 1.1 thousand and two fewer games. And then in year three, Adunze had 1,640 yards to Neighbors' 1,569, but Neighbors did that in two fewer games. So that was a little bit more impressive from a per game perspective. So there is some context to consider here with that COVID year. But from just a straight analytic standpoint, it's not 100% fair since Neighbors really is a true full year younger. Switching from a production view to an on-field view, some notable scouts that I respect, and Daniel Jeremiah, Nate Tice, Matt Harmon, they all have Odunze over Neighbors. Interestingly, Matt Harmon's reception perception showed Odunze is an elite route runner. He had the first all-green route tree, meaning he was above average in success rate on every single one of the routes on the route tree. Though Neighbors might be better as a yak threat, Odunze is better contested catch in the contested catching scenarios because, last year he was one of the best. It was in the mid 70s, the amount that he caught, which is ridiculous. You don't usually see numbers that high. But he has the size to do it too. He's 3 inches taller, about 15 pounds heavier than Neighbors as well. So it kind of lends himself to be better in that department anyways. And I think he's just going to be a great, great red zone target from day one. And Adunze in the yak department, he wasn't a slouch either. He was pretty good there as well. But Adunze also played with two other wide receivers that have 1,000 yards in college, who will be playing in the NFL too. So inherently, his yards per route run is going to be a little bit lower. But yeah, lastly with Adunze, what I like is he profiles perfectly as that prototypical X wide receiver, which that tends to translate a little smoother to the pros than somebody from the slot. So yeah, I feel pretty confident in his translation to the NFL, and I think he has a extremely high ceiling. I think he could be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I love Odunze as well. And I'm excited about the teams where I have the 106, and I know I'm probably going to be able to grab him there. And we've already talked a lot about Neighbors the last few episodes, so I don't really want to dive too much into the stats that we love for him here as like a continued argument that you're going to hear over and over and over again, but incredibly productive wide receiver in college, very young as well. But what it comes down to me for a tiebreaker here that I'm going to go, and if you want that data, go to the 103, 104 videos we have. But really for me, it's the competition in the SEC means a lot to me. So maybe I am a little bit off in my process here, and I do want to admit that there are guys like Jalen Hyatt who have an incredible season in the SEC, and then it just doesn't work out in the NFL. But I do think that the level of competition he played against on a weekly basis is just better than what Odunze had to play against. So I kind of view his numbers. I view it's harder to get open in the SEC. So maybe these like how open he is on his routes, how often he wins routes. Maybe it's not quite as incredible as someone playing in the Pac 12. So I try to take that into consideration a little bit to break ties, not to like be like an end all be all. But if it's like close enough, I kind of lean that way. Also, he went to the wide receiver university, LSU. I don't know, honestly, any other school that could try to take that name. It doesn't even make sense to me. They literally they birthed. I think that's the correct term. The wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Dynasty right now. So I think I'm going to go back to that pedigree of coming from that university, that conference that has such high level of competition, and really bank on that in my process.
Yeah, I just need to take a second and apologize to our listeners. Justin, we don't typically like to lie to them. So please, in the future, let's not do that. Okay. We all know wide receiver use in Columbus, Ohio. We go back and forth on this all day. Believe me, Buckeye fans and LSU fans do go back and forth on this all day. Both schools produce tremendous wide receivers. I'm a Buckeye. It's wide receiver, in my opinion. You can make a statistical case to go either way, but that's not the point of this video. I do think JP makes some great points about Roma Dunze, and I've been on high on him through this whole process as well. I am moving closer and closer to putting him in the same tier as Malik Neighbors, but I have not quite gotten there yet. So I'm going to do something that I've been waiting for a few episodes. It's time to finally fix the mistake we made in the 103 video and then let continue in the 104 video. We will not let Malik Neighbors slip any further. We're going to jump for joy anytime we get to select him at 105 and count that as a massive win.
All right. So our rookie draft comes into frame here with Malik Neighbors at the 105 as a potential screaming value here. So thank you for joining us for another Framing a Rookie Draft. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you view or listen. And from all of us here at Dino Construction, until next time.